It's weird to see AJ in the other room, but he's not on the show with me today. We're doing a little swapperoo. That's the way we have to do it nowadays. And AJ pitched in for Andrew, and now David Sears in for me. We're gonna have a good time and throw down this afternoon. A lot of news, man. It is a really heavy news cycle that we're in right now. Sadly, though, we start the show with this developing story that's just coming out about the student from Alabama, Jimmy Gracie. They believe pretty much Barcelona authorities. They really part of that area they call Catalan, but the Catalan police have now cordoned off an area. They found a body that fits the description of this young man, and it looks like they have found him passed away. I did see some conflicting reporting as to whether or not police at this moment believe this is foul play. I thought I read, if I read it correctly, in a report by my friend Carol Robinson over at AL.com, that maybe a witness had said they saw him walking toward the water at some point that evening, which could indicate if he had been drinking with his friends and out that late, could be a tragic accident. We don't know for sure. The mystery about the cell phone is another issue. They found that yesterday, found his wallet floating in the water. And then, of course, from there, you suspected something horrible. I'll tell you, it's funny stories, and I've spent a lifetime doing and participating and covering news stories. Some stories kind of hit you in the boo boo, and I think it's when you relate to them. And this is one that kind of caught me simply because my sons at that age did some international travel. And I actually, the one that really loved Barcelona, and he kept convincing me, Dad, it's totally safe. I remember having the same conversation with him. I was like, because he would go alone. He would do these conventions, and sometimes some of my boys did mission trips, or in his case, he did some medical conferences and things like that. And he'd go, totally fine. It's a completely safe city. And it is. It feels that way. I got to go there last year, and it's walkable. And I don't mean this as an insult to Tuscaloosa, because this is just America. This could have happened in T-Town. I mean, an incident or something, can happen to college kids at that age anywhere. And I would dare say this city's probably safer than Tuscaloosa in some occasions. That's not a knock on Tuscaloosa. It's more of how safe that city really is. And so, but the young man's dad, I understood, got on a plane immediately and got to Barcelona. I think he's got family on the ground. His fraternity has been real vocal in supporting him, and it's just sorry about that. AJ, David, it's probably spam callers, man. I got to remember how to turn my phone off. You think I'd remember to turn the thing off?
I mean, you've only been doing this how many years?
Do they hit you 19 times a day? They're filling
yeah.
up. They're filling up my voicemail. I can't keep my voicemail clean from sending their calls to voicemail. I get 50 calls a day with these people.
I feel you, man.
It's ridiculous. How you doing, man?
Doing all right, man. Just working.
Glad to have you back.
Worked a half day at the other job, and AJ asked if I could fill in. He's like, "You do 10 to 2 or 2 to 6?" I was like, "I can't do 10 to 2, but I can do 2 to 6."
2 to 6 is good.
There you go.
We get to have some old times.
There you go.
So naturally, we got war updates. We got Trump stuff. Trump said one of the funniest things I think I've ever heard him say, and I gotta admit, I had a moment with the president today, and this is how it went down. I had just done my workout, David. Yeah, I know it. It probably doesn't look like it, but I do try to work out.
No, you got the dad bod, but
And,
a little fitter version.
Hey, calm down. And so I just got through huffing and puffing on the treadmill, and I decided to take a little break, catch up on the news. I can't put the news down during the day because I got to get ready for the show every day. And Trump's got the Japanese prime minister, there with the gold chairs, that VIP head of state set up when we always do a joint news conference. And one of the Japanese, at the end, he decided to call on a Japanese reporter. He realized the American reporters had too many questions. He said, why don't we call on one of these fine Japanese reporters? And the Japanese, I'm paraphrasing because we got the soundbite, and we'll play it for you in a little bit. The Japanese reporter said, we are all friends. Japan and the United States are friends. I don't have to do the accent, do I? He goes,
you shouldn't do the accent.
He said, why you not tell us about bombing of Iran? And Trump said, in so many words, and here was my moment that I had with Trump. When he said that.
You want me to play it?
Yeah. Let me set this up
right.
then. I'm glad you got it. Right before Trump said this, the minute that reporter asked that question, the first thing that hit my head, because my whole worldview is based on stereotypes. I'm not going to lie. I went, did a guy from Japan just ask us a question about a surprise attack? I mean, in my mind, it was funny. And then Trump said it. He said it out loud in the White House, and you can even hear one person go, "Oh," like groan. Everybody else in the country laughed. Here's how it went down.
Of course, no, Japan and US are very good friends. But one question: why didn't you tell US allies in Europe and Asia, like Japan, about the war before attacking Iran? So we are very confused about we Japanese citizens.
Well, one thing, you don't want to signal too much. You know, when we go in, we went in very hard, and we didn't tell anybody about it because we wanted surprise. Who knows better about surprise than Japan? Okay? Why didn't you tell me about Pearl Harbor? Okay?
Oh, you got to be an American to get that. And I think they laughed it off. You could see the prime minister was a little bit uncomfortable in the moment she did because she was a little bit on delay. She understands English, but probably not as well. And you could see her kind of absorb the moment.
I mean,
every American that has any connection with history understands that he was going to go there. Thank God we've got a president that just speaks his mind. I don't even.
Isn't that the 85th anniversary this year?
Yeah, I think
December 7th, 1941.
1941, exactly. Good math, my man. Yeah, and look, we've become allies, but the whole point of, and here's the thing about, let me just talk about this for a second. It wasn't, I'm not going to say it was a silly question, but why in the hell, one, would any superpower give up their war plans to the world? The mainstream media that interview the president every day keep asking him about tactical plans. Are there going to be boots on the ground? When will there be boots on the ground? When will this war end? How will you define? No smart president's ever going to answer those questions. You're not going to give your war strategy through the media to your enemies. You're going to keep on fighting until you decide it's time to quit fighting, and then you can explain yourself. And that's what we're clearly going to do here. So this guy, we sent three aircraft carriers into that region prior to this attack. What did he think was going to go down? We surrounded the place. We sent them from all directions while the negotiations were going on, and he's surprised by it. I mean, anyway, we're very confused. No, you're not confused. You saw what we did. How's that going? Man, let's talk about it. We've had some things today. Let me just we'll start with an Iran update, and then we'll work through everything else. I want to start with the market news. The WTI, and I've had to try to describe this because we don't keep up with crude price every day in the general public, but there are two indexes. And the West Texas index is called the WTI. That's more of our domestic market. And then we've got the Brent crude price, and that's generally ocean-bound international oil, right? That's produced, say, in Saudi Arabia and consumed by Japanese and China and some of the other countries in the world, most of Europe. They have to import their oil. We've got the luxury of being an oil net exporter. We make our own. And then we also export, but the markets aren't even determined by that production. They're determined by this commodities trading system where people anywhere can invest in the futures of those markets. And they tend to track together, but we're way less than the Brent price. And today it's in the negative. After all the noise about oil infrastructure, the next move and the next phase in this whole thing is clearly Iran's strategy. Now that they don't have a military, is terror attacks on the oil infrastructure of their neighbors. And then Trump, of course, has the possibility of destroying their infrastructure. The prospects of permanent damage, not just a temporary shutdown of the strait, started rocking the markets. But considering you've got actual bombs going off and threats being made to that region and even a gas field attacked in the Persian Gulf, oil prices coming down today. Now, there could be a lot of reasons for that. On the positive side of it, right now, Brent is at 94. We'll tell you where it settles. I mean, excuse me, not Brent, the WTI. It stands for West Texas Intermediate, but we don't need to get into the technical specs. And the networks have gone to showing a ticker of oil prices, and it's counterintuitive because you look up, we're conditioned to look up and you see the Dow or any of the other stocks, and you see red, that seems like a bad thing. You see green, we're having a good day. You look up and see red, well, that's good. Red is good news. It means the price is going down, and it's down on the day. We don't know where it's going to end, but that's a real surprise. So what's keeping it up? What's keeping it now? It's high, but what's keeping it from just jetting and going back to $120 or something? One, Trump made a move today and said that there is, I think, 140 million barrels of oil floating around on container ships that belonged at one point to Iran before this attack, and they're going to allow that oil to go to market. In other words, it's not just going to be seized and get flooded into the market immediately because I guess it's no longer, well, by the sanctions, Iran can't profit from it anyway. And it would have been going to China on the black market, but that oil is about to hit the main market, and that's good news. That's a supply upload, right? Then we had suddenly out of nowhere, much to the insistence of the Trump administration, you had some NATO allies joined by Japan today because Japan was in our country. They all came out and said, 6 of them said, we're going to join the effort to create some kind of flotilla or escort and keep the Strait of Hormuz open. So it was, see if I can remember the countries: Germany, France, Italy, UK, Netherlands, Japan, and I think I'm missing one. So that was good news. Now, we don't know exactly the details of the plan, but the resistance of the Europeans and, for their part, Japan, to giving any sort of help to their own cause. This is their oil. This is their product that they need. And there's also other shipping that goes through those shipping lanes around the strait. They're going to get in the game. That's good. All that's good. And even if the resistance goes away, that's good news. And so a flotilla, we can call it a flotilla, but having to escort oil tankers through the strait is not new to the world. And again, it's because of Iran. Reagan had to do it. During the 80s, the United States military, we had one of our callers the other day was on one of those ships, had to escort those tankers because Iran is always threatening to choke the world. They are terrorists as a regime, and that's what terrorists do. They find a weak point, and it doesn't take much to do that kind of activity. In other words, they don't have a military anymore. It's gone. But they still have some capability to launch a missile here and there, to pull out a drone every now and then. And so that threat, with the minimal low-tech effort, they can still cause trouble in this choke point for the world. So it's still dangerous until that regime is just overthrown. And there's some signs today that that's starting to happen. And I'll get into some of that in just a minute. So, but it's a point, I think, if you have a long view of history and a long view of the world, you get why this is so important. The fact that oil shot up so quickly, number one, and then Iran, even in a weakened state, could still do this to the world and are doing it, not only bombing their neighbors, hitting oil infrastructure, and trying to choke off the strait, is the whole point of the war. The war didn't cause that. You need to teach this to your uneducated friends that don't know much about history. Those of us that are a little long in the tooth have already seen this before. We lived through the Iranians, the regime taking over the Iranian country. By the way, they don't elect the Ayatollah. He comes in 1979, the original Ayatollah. By the way, did you know he was riding in a Suburban? I just thought that was funny. They hated the West. They took our hostages. They were anti-America. They took over the country. And he rode in, instead of on a donkey or a camel or something, he rode in a Chevy Suburban.
There's
a video clip of him taking over.
Amazing SUVs. And, they do the heavy-duty security of those, making bomb-proof and everything.
It's pretty cool. Anyway, I don't know why I remember watching a documentary on it in college, just a few years after it happened, and it was thick in our imaginations in those days, like the Cold War was with the Soviets. And I remember one of the kids in my class going, "Dang, he's riding in a Suburban," and I never got that. It's like he looked like a hypocrite on day one. But anyway, back to my little talk here. The fact that they can do this even with the minimal power they have left is proof to the world that we've got to fix this situation once and for all. The world has been threatened by these people for nearly 5 decades, and it's time for it to end. And the price we have to pay now to let them try to shut the strait, let the world come together as they're doing to defend the strait, and then the world gets all the oil it could possibly stand. We're going to have so much oil, I'm afraid prices will crash. That's not good either. That's not an overstatement. It's the oil's there. It's coming out of the ground. It's being produced. We've got this artificial situation, and that is clearly traceable and understandable. with the commodities markets.
You know, it's a big deal. Last night they talked about it on the NCAA tournament, or I'm sorry, 2 nights ago on the NCAA tournament, because Charles Barkley was making jokes about how the oil price was so high, so Texas would be able to buy all the best players. So
Barkley, leave it to Barkley to get into this story somehow. Good for him. Or is he saying he's talking about football, or is he talking about?
No, he's talking about basketball.
All the players get bought
Texas,
now anyway.
Texas played in the opening 4, and he was talking about Texas spending money. So
okay,
it was fun. I mean, Barkley won't say what Barkley want to say.
Their players can buy all the weed now.
Hey,
I'm just saying.
2.1.
Just saying.
2.1 means it was not for distribution. 2.1, he avoids.
No, that doesn't mean it wasn't for distribution. That means the law can't pinch him for distribution.
No, it wasn't for distribution.
You know what I think that was?
He,
I think
he has bad glaucoma. That's why he keeps missing so much.
I think it's these kids now have NIL money, so they do stupid stuff with it immediately. And this guy probably went out. His dealer shows up to sell him a little Ziploc bag, and he goes, "No, I want all of it. Give me the whole bag back."
Look,
I got
kids
the money
are
now.
stupid.
They're
kids
completely stupid.
And you're giving them millions. That's
they're
a whole
too
other
stupid for that money.
Sorry.
Yeah. Hey, we'll get into that maybe. It's an issue that's before us as well. All that NIL nonsense. But anyway, all right, back to Iran. I'll tell you what, let me take this break because I got to get in. We had an incident with an F-35 stealth fighter. We need to talk about that, what we think happened. And then we've got some indications of defections within the regime on multiple levels. It's starting to cascade a little bit. And that's the best hope for this whole thing, is that the regime just folds. And then the resistance, it wouldn't matter about how many missiles they have, because what's left of their government finally hits the road. We'll give you updates on that here in a minute too. Axiom Tax Resolution Group, 205tax.com, 205tax.com. That's my man, Perry Cronin. There's never a more intense time for me to tell you about him than right now in the middle of tax season. We're in it. And some of you are still dragging around weight from previous tax years. You need to deal with it. Running from it will not work. They know who you are. They got your information before you file. You know that, right? Your employer turns it in. Anybody that pays you turns it in on their side. They're just waiting on you to step up and put your filing in so they can harass you over it. In some cases, accept it. It's a crazy system that we have, and I hope we're moving away from it. But in the meantime, we all got to square up with these people. And if you're behind, Perry can help. Perry is an absolute expert. I don't think there's anybody in the country that knows more about dealing with this stuff than Perry. He has done it for decades, and we're lucky to have somebody with this expertise in Birmingham that can sit down with us in the privacy of a face-to-face meeting and work this stuff out. He's not going to look down his nose at you. You don't need to be embarrassed. Lots of people make mistakes with the IRS tax code. Let him help. He can get you settled for less. He can get you a payback plan. He's really, really good at what he does, and you'll like Perry and getting to know him and his family and his team. It's Axiom Tax Resolution Group, 205tax.com. Get some sleep at night again. Don't let this haunt you. Let Perry help. 205tax.com is the website. 872-1100 is the phone number. Axiom Tax Resolution Group. All right, here we go. David, do you have the AJ cam in there? Can you turn yourself? You know how to do that?
I got
AJ's got a button where you can turn himself on when we start getting into it. You know,
this is the second time I've run this, so
don't worry about it. It's all good.
I've got the Leland Live button, so it's showing your lovely face with your logo behind it.
It's so lovely. The camera's so close to me here. I like my other studio better, but here I am. 225 Leland Live. Let's do this thing. Let me go back into what I sort of had a stream of consciousness about the updates. You know, every day, if you compartmentalize this whole drama, you've got the markets, you got oil, and then you got the battlefield conditions. What's happened today? Who's done what? You know, what's the score? And then you move on to the ancillary political stuff and all the other things attached to it. So I try to do that so it all makes sense because I wound up taking notes about each little part of this thing. The F-35 incident, my understanding right now is that's one of our stealth fighters. We had one have to make an emergency landing. The pilot is okay. I think he was injured. It was at first claimed that he was hit by maybe a surface-to-air missile. And that's almost, I'm not saying it's impossible, but considering the capabilities of that aircraft and the incapability of the Iranians, it would be a sort of a surprise. Now, things are going to happen in an active battle space. But what we believe happened at this point, and we're still following this to see if we can get an update, is there was a bomb, a missile intercept in the area where he was flying. And I say he, it may be a female pilot, but there was an intercept with one of these missile-to-missile systems, and the shrapnel from that was in the air like flak in World War II when the bombers would fly over Germany, and the flak hit the aircraft, damaged the aircraft, and he was able to safely get back. In a million years, I can't imagine it was an actual missile contact. The aircraft would have come down. The aircraft would no longer have been able to fly if it was an explosive missile. That makes a lot more sense than some of the initial stories we were getting earlier on about this Iranian situation. So again, Benjamin Netanyahu held a news conference. I think he's still going live. It's a little bit difficult. He switches from English back to Hebrew from time to time. Is he in English right now, David? We might want to listen to this for just a second.
And we're fighting alongside the United States when the chips are down. We're fighting with the United States. We're fighting for a common goal. So I can tell you that that's the most important coordination. But in practice, President Trump and I speak regularly. We discuss things. Our staffs discuss things. Our militaries are in close coordination as never before. But ultimately, President Trump makes his own decisions. And do I respect them? Yes, I do.
The question is whether you would or could continue the war without.
Just one question, Jeremy.
Right.
Thank you.
So it looks like they're going to break in there at the networks. The question comes from this assertion that somehow Israel pressured Trump into this war. Now, I wish Trump's enemies could get their story straight. 1 minute he's a Nazi, then the next, and now he's being told what to do by the Jews. Okay, whatever. Then the next minute he's a dictator and an oligarch or something like that. But then he's also being wagged around by a smaller country. It's not the case. There was some conflict between us and Israel because Israel hit a gas field in the middle of the Persian Gulf. And Trump's strategy so far is don't hit the oil infrastructure and the gas infrastructure targets. We don't want to do world economic damage. We're just trying to deal with the capabilities of the regime. Now, again, the two countries have a similar purpose, but similar responsibilities in this. Israel's largely been doing all the personnel assassinations. The United States is largely going after what we said we would do. Our capability is with the nuclear program, the missile program, and their Navy. And we've done it. All that's been reduced to rubble. We're still dealing with the embers of those fires, and we'll keep doing it until we're done. And Trump says we're close to fulfilling our part of the mission. We'll see how this goes over the next several hours. Updates when we get it. Leland Live. Yeah, buddy. All right, 234 Leland Live, Talk 99.5. Storm Restoration Roofing is the next sponsor up here on the show today. That's my friend Greg Nelson. And I'm telling you, it's everything you want in a roofer. The guy knows what he's doing. He's local, and that's so important because, I mean, there are a lot of fly-by-night operations. There are whole companies that will say it, there's a storm damaged area. They'll pack up and send a crew into the area to get business. Now, I understand that. I respect that. That's just hustling up business where business is to be had. But those people don't live there. They're not going to be there when they're done with the roof job. They're back to the next market or they're going to go back home. How are you going to find them if something's not right? Work with the local roofer. Greg would say that about his fellow competitors. Work with people that know the territory here that are going to be there down the road. And that's Greg. Almost 30 years in the business. He knows all the insurance companies and what they require. And he can help you get that claim done or just get that roof fixed. If it's just old, then it's time for a roof. It's Storm Restoration Storm Restoration Roofing. He goes on a phone number, and that number is 205-542-3531. 205-542-3531. Jot that down, and I say this every time I mention him because often people they hear me every day talk about different sponsors, and they kind of got the gist, but they didn't remember the number or the website or whatever. And I don't mind that in as much as you can track me down at night or on the weekends through social media or whatever. Happy to help if I see your message. But best thing to do is just go ahead and have this where you can get to it if you have an emergency. 205-542-3531. It is storm season, so be prepared to take care of your place. Storm Restoration Roofing. All right, so let me pivot a little bit. I think I gave Iran all the take I could give for the moment, except for one story, tragic story. Apparently, the Iranians hung or executed a 19-year-old wrestler who had shown up. This guy had wrestled, I guess, internationally for the country, but he just attended a rally back in January. They identified him and then publicly executed him. That's who we're dealing with. The resentment for them doing this to their own people is building underneath, and we're starting to get stories. Tom Bissett said today, and I trust him, he seems to be a pretty straightforward guy, that being the Treasury Secretary, able to monitor international banking. Our intelligence services are watching money transfers in Iran because that's important down the road. Some of these dictators, whoever's left, when they decide to run for it, one of the first signals is they're going to move money offshore. Then they're going to get themselves out of the country, and they're basically stealing what they can to nest egg themselves somewhere in exile. And that's world history. It's always happened. So we're watching for that for several reasons. One, to get an indication of that is happening, and two, to be able to seize those assets, freeze them, and get those returned to the Iranian people when it's safe to do so. And so we're doing that. We've got every element. It's a whole of government approach in terms of our focus on making sure that we're successful here. And so they're picking up on traffic that some of the players that remain alive in that country are doing just that. They're offshoring money into different accounts. They're preparing themselves to try to get out, probably on land, certainly not through the air, out of Iran. That's a good sign. Yesterday we had some people, just regular Iranians, we believe, maybe supported by our CIA or other groups, on the ground starting to shoot at IRGC checkpoints where they're trying to keep neighborhoods on lockdown. That's an important sign. They got to have the weapons. They have the courage. They got to have the weapons and coordination to do that. We had the story yesterday, too, where I think Mossad is actually doing this. They're calling some of these commanders on the ground and saying, hey, we got your number. We know where you live. You're on our death list. You need to take your uniform off and lay down your weapons now, or you're next. And some of them are doing it. At some point, when it's life or death and they can't communicate and there's chaos on the ground, an uprising from within, when those people are safe and when it's safe enough and when they're capable enough, will be the ultimate solution to all this stuff. Then all the threats are gone. It doesn't matter if they've got a missile silo somewhere. The order's not going to go to trigger that silo. Now, what is happening, and the intelligence on this remains consistent. Any missile you see going at Oman or at Israel or from any area, those were pre-existing sort of dead man switch orders in sealed, they call them radio packets, I think, or sealed packets of instructions. Should this happen, then open this letter and hit this target with this missile hidden in this bunker. And so it was pre-gaming by the Iranians, pretty smart strategy. It's sort of an end times, last ditch effort strategy in a succession plan should the leadership get taken out. So now they're into that, which is still a good sign, believe it or not. It's a sign that those orders are being executed, but every time they do it, we smoke out another missile launch location, and that's one less missile that they've got in the theater, and most of them are being intercepted as it is. Every now and then they get a pop shot. Now, one other insidious thing that they're doing is they're not just going after oil infrastructure or military targets. They've got missiles that break into bomblets. They're kind of cluster bombs in that way. And I don't want to use the wrong terminology, but basically these are anti-personnel devices that once they shoot them over a target, the things explode and the bomblets come down like shrapnel and they can further explode. And that's just for killing people. And they're sending those towards civilian areas. And that's a war crime in and of itself. But this is who we're dealing with. This regime is not long for this world. I don't think they're going to, I really don't believe they're going to stay in place. There's too much pressure on the ground to get them out. So that's the last I have on any of this stuff. We'll get to the rest of it here in just a little while. Let me throw some random stuff in here and then we'll move around. Chuck Norris has been taken to the hospital. He's in critical condition, it appears. Some kind of emergency medical thing. How old is Chuck Norris now? He's in his 80s, right?
I believe he just turned 85. I think his birthday was last month.
Sometimes you don't see these folks, and he'll always be in my mind, the Chuck Norris from back in the day, right? And then you see them, and they appear in public. It was like when Gene Hackman died. I couldn't believe how old Gene Hackman had gotten.
His birthday was last week. He turned 86.
Oh, wow. Just a likable character. And was very public. He was still doing exercise commercials or something very recently.
He's doing that, and he's doing conventions.
Yeah. You remember all the Chuck Norris jokes?
You know, Chuck Norris once had a staring contest with the sun and won.
That's what I mean. I knew you'd be ready for that. All right, so that was on my list of just randomness today. I just saw that come across a second ago too. Let's talk about Trump polling for a second. We'll go into raw politics. Now, the Senate is continuing to debate the SAVE Act. There's this notion by Senator Kennedy that somehow they're going to be able to switch the whole thing to a reconciliation bill, which would make it a 50-vote majority, which the Republicans still claim they can count 50 among them with J.D. Vance, and that's the path that this standard that Thune has set, where they've still got to operate under the filibuster rules and need 60 votes, thus giving the Democrats a huge advantage. This is the palace intrigue going on behind the scenes. I don't know how true any of that is. Republicans want to try to quote. I heard a news anchor today say, well, the Republicans just need to make their point, and even if they don't win this, they will have made a point. You know, we're kind of sick of them making points. We're just tired of them making points. We need some success. Now, I'm a Debbie doubter right now. I just am, and because I've been burned by these people so many times, and I'm not even trying to be right now, but right after Trump was elected, I said, it's going to be the Senate that screws him over and stalls his agenda, and it's happening right in front of us. And you knew it was going to happen when they put Thune in power. But we've got a situation where the Democrats are absolutely freaking the hell out right now. I mean, they are panicked over the SAVE Act. Now, let's talk about them for a minute. Two things are happening to them at once. Victor Davis Hanson gave a great takedown on this yesterday. I really respect his intellect and watch his commentaries. He's one of the few people I really sort of listen to. Everybody else is just making a lot of noise. And I hate to say it, but I've been saying something similar, probably not as eloquently as him. But in the last 15 months or so, Trump is going after all of their institutions. Everything the left built to keep power in this country through using the universities, HR departments at corporations. They had gone to places, as he points out, that were not places that are accountable to voters to control power over people. The DEI movement, that infected everything. That was social control. That was an effort to gain power for their worldview. And they did it very effectively. They just invaded all these institutions and took them over and were steering a lot of things. And COVID was a big help to them as well. But the pushback has started. and their propaganda machine with USAID and public broadcasting and some of these universities teaching the social engineering nonsense that's being clipped. All of these things are coming apart on them. Their funding mechanisms, Act Blue's under investigation. And then there's this whole house of cards they built for themselves, which is to immigrate as many people as they can here from non-Western countries and crash the system and count on those people to be able to vote. Now, the deportations are a big threat to that because if they're not here, you can't even plausibly get them signed up and vote for them. And so that is every day those planes leave. And by the way, there's still raid operations going on in the country. The Trump administration has pivoted to a different approach. We had a call about this the other day. You felt like nothing was happening. They quit being so high profile and making a public show of the ICE raids and the roundups and the arrests. And they've decided to quit doing that in a sort of PR way, but just count the numbers. And the numbers are going up. We need Mark Wayne Mullen to get in as Homeland Security Director to further direct that. But it's happening. They're happening. The situation is still going on. And so back to the Democrats. So they are throwing their bodies in front of the funding for Homeland Security over this issue. I don't think they think ultimately they'll win this, and they're taking a hell of a PR hit from people standing in airport lines and folks that feel sympathy for the TSA workers. But they're willing to do it because it slows down, in their mind, some of the efforts to remove these people from the country. And at the same time, they're having to fight off the SAVE Act, which, while I want the thing passed, and I feel like what we're having to deal with right now is pure theater, it's still forcing the Democrats to get out and have to stand there and put the hours in to fight this thing, and they're sheerly in a panic, saying the most ridiculous things about the bill, absolute things that are not in it, that aren't required and aren't a threat to anybody. They're making stuff up because I think they believe a lot of their supporters just don't read a lot or keep up or are easily duped by their hubris, and they're just saying what they want about the bill. So it hangs there, and the debate is good, but a lot of people aren't watching every minute of it. It may go through the weekend. I can't predict the outcome. My heart of heart tells me Republicans will fail. They'll try to somehow blame it on the Democrats, but it's just because they weren't ready to fight a real fight. They keep wanting to play by Queensberry rules, and that's never going to work in this environment. The country's at stake. It literally is. This election could change everything. All this reform continues after the midterms or it's over.
Are you concerned, though, that if the Democrats do get back into power, that they'll use the 50-vote threshold?
Yeah, they're going to do it anyway. 100% they're going to
do it to them before.
You know why I know that? Because they just tried to do it. They just tried to get rid of it, and the only thing that stopped them was Fetterman and Joe Manchin, who's not in the Senate anymore. So Fetterman, they've kind of lost him in some ways. And if they got power again and they had the majority the Republicans have, it'd be over. It'd be a steam train. They're going to do it. The best, it's a suicide pact to think that way for the Republicans, saying, well, we shouldn't be unfair about this because, we would, the golden rule, do unto others is you would have them do unto you. That's the golden rule. You know what I believe in, David? I believe in, I don't know what to call it. I believe it
has the gold makes the rules.
Or I believe in, we'll call it the platinum rule. It's superior. It's do unto others before they can do unto you. That's how they ought to operate the Senate anyway. Anyway, I got squirreled. So yeah, I'm watching them fight about it. I'm watching them heave. I'm watching some of the ridiculous antics on the floor. From time to time, we get a good clip. And if we get something we can play on the radio this afternoon, we will. I'm not going to debate it because there's no point. These people are wrong. This is common sense stuff that 50 other industrialized nations do in terms of requiring citizenship and ID so that you can vote. But let me say this too, just pure cynicism here. But even if you pass the SAVE Act, I don't want people to be duped in some false sense of security that even if the Republicans get it through, well, that's over for cheating in the elections. No, because the people that have to enforce this law in their states, follow me here, say California. If California is required by this new federal law to check IDs and to check for citizenship, which, by the way, is done at registration. It's not every time you go to vote. Democrats are making people think you got to come to the polls with a passport. No, you register and declare that at registration, just like you do when you go get a driver's license. And when you're in the system and you're a citizen, you're in, and then you just have to identify yourself at the polls. Two different deals, really, in terms of proof of whatever. But do you expect that the Democrats running California are going to enforce this law fairly? They didn't enforce a lot of the criminal laws, and crime went out of control. They haven't looked once at the actual immigration laws. They're declaring themselves sanctuary from the immigration laws. Minnesota, California, New Jersey, they're declaring themselves, because of their self-righteousness, above federal law on immigration. So do you think they won't do the same thing with the SAVE Act? They will institute mechanism and systems to continue to cheat and get around that system. They got to figure it out, and this will make it harder for sure. And it at least will give a law for investigators to wrap some charges around if they can catch them in the act, which is still going to be difficult. But I think we may be a little bit too optimistic about how effective this would be, because the states that need to protect now one place that is going to change it, I don't think they can control, is the census, because that's a federal government responsibility. That doesn't come up till 2030, but we're getting there. And with the census, California is going to lose 10 or 15 congressional seats and electoral votes, and other blue states are too. That's their deadline. Follow me here, is the 2030 census. That's when they really lose power. It's not even the midterms. And what they're trying to do is backfill their populations with these illegals from the Americans that are fleeing these states, fleeing California and New York. They're trying, and that's happening. It's a population shift, illegals for Americans. But if it's only Americans that can be counted in the census and or vote, game changer. And that's where I wish the Republicans would focus. I think there's a Supreme Court case that may determine that. We haven't heard from it yet. All right, man, that's enough of a ramble for this hour. Let's get to the break. We'll come back. Your phone calls at some point. Once we quit chasing headlines and updates, when we get them, breaking news, when we get it, Leland Live. Y'all, Lonnie's Furniture Company is ready to hook you up with some beautiful stuff. You want to do some spring sprucing up. I know I'm doing that mostly on the outside. I've given up any control of the inside of the house. That's little mama's decision. But my house is already good because it's full of Lonnie's furniture. And I'm telling you, from time to time, it's just time to make some changes. Ladies, if it's just a lamp or two, or you want to change out some rugs or whatever, they've got them. All that stuff at Lonnie's. It's worth the trip from all over the audience just to see the size of this place, and you can almost feel the quality. Do y'all know what I mean? You can feel quality. You can sense it. You walk in, it just feels nice. All that furniture looks and smells and feels so nice. You sit on it and go, this is a nice piece right here. That's what you're looking for. Fair pricing, custom delivery, all the selection in the world, plenty of style options, and the ability to custom order. And you just can't beat all that in one place. Perhaps that is why the Lonnie's name has been around for, I think, 93 years now. I need to call Reggie one day and ask him exactly what the birthday is. Lonnie's Furniture Company. These folks are coming up on 100 years. I wonder how many businesses are left in Alabama that are 100 years old. Not many. Not many.
Leland's List, one of them.
Leland's List. It sounds like it's 100 years old. It's just they decided to blizzard ads for the thing. All this. I don't know. We'll talk. Lonnie'sFurnitureCompany.com. Lonnie is Furniture Company. Y'all go see him off exit 280 on I-65. Lonnie is Furniture Company. All right, back to the Jimmy Gracie story, the Alabama student that they recovered his body today in Barcelona. And we don't have a 100% identification, but he matches the description, and all the authorities believe it's him. I guess you could call it a twist, and there's no good in this story. That family is going to be heartbroken no matter what the circumstances are. But it does feel like, according to some witnesses there, that he was seen out. They have a waterfront. Barcelona is an interesting city. It feels like it's maybe about as big as Birmingham, but a lot safer and a lot walkable. And they are on the water, on the Mediterranean. And I walked down to the water at one point last year, but we just kind of went to a marina area, which looks like it's very close to where they've found this young man. There's kind of a beach there, and it is that kind of city too. And you would imagine kids that age would want to be down on the water. But witnesses said they saw him walking out on they called it a rock outcropping. I think we would call it a jetty. And I do remember those. They had jetties built to protect the harbor, boats coming and going. And he might have just fallen in the water, especially if he had been drinking that night. Just because he was out at 3 a.m. doesn't necessarily mean he was drinking either. But it wouldn't be the first time we've heard of a kid that age, overdoing it, losing judgment, losing your balance. I mean, the first thing that happens is you lose your judgment. You get overconfident. And so it's within the realm of possibility that this was just a terrible accident.
Especially if you're on those slick rocks, you fall, bust your head,
absolutely,
knock yourself out,
hit your head, knock yourself out. I was trying to remember what are the water conditions like. Pretty dark water. Some of the Mediterranean is super clear and beautiful, but some of it's kind of dark and murky. This is dark water, but it's not real wavy. We think of a beach as these waves rolling in and washing things up. This is less so. In other words, boats can pull in and out of the same harbor. And so I could see how if he hit his head and sank down underneath. Now, I don't mean to be morbid, but sadly I've covered more than my share of drowning incidents, and all the way back to being a teenager covering stories like that. And sadly, bodies they don't immediately float like in the movies. You don't drown, fall in the water, and begin floating. You usually sink until decomposition kicks in after about 3 or 4 days. And then a body can, if it's not tangled, will tend to float. And so I can see why it would have taken them a few days with the murky water conditions and the amount of time we've been, what are we, like 4 days out? But they did find him, and I know the family is just shaken by it. And rather than foul play, which was suspected at one point, it may have just been that he fell in the water. And I guess there's a lesson for all of us. You're talking to your kids that are in that age range. You know they're going to do it. You know they're going to go out. They're going to be social. They're going to try things with their new freedom. Give them every lecture you can and make sure they got a wingman everywhere they go for all kinds of stuff like this.